Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have Microsoft and Action Tech present their amazing and innovative solutions. And also wanted to share a few things about connection and how we're focusing on K-12. My name is Lisa Trisciani. I'm the Vice President of our field sales at Connection. This has definitely been one of the most unique years that I've experienced, having everybody be in this physical world, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're remote and we're home, and we're trying to learn and teach from home. So it's been very interesting, and from that we've learned a lot. And so Connection's really trying to focus on specific things to help us be successful. We've really put a lot into our resources, professional development, our hybrid and innovative learning solutions, furniture to modernize spaces, E-rate, security, which has been a huge focus for us, availability on technology. And I'll go through a little bit of that, of what we're seeing from forecast and pipeline of technology. STEM. We haven't talked about STEM for so long, and we miss it. So we're going to be focusing a lot on our STEM technologies and solutions, and also CARES and stimulus. How is that being done? How is it being pulled out to the different schools within the school districts, and also grants, seeing how we can help you fund a lot of these solutions to have you be successful for the upcoming year. And we're finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I think people are getting ready to, get their vaccinations and going back to school in person. So what happens next? Where do we go from here, and how can we help? So one of the first things that we've done is we've really developed our solutions and resources around K-12 specifically. We've hired this amazing individual. She's from Brevard County School District. She's focusing specifically on K-12 solutions. She works with the manufacturers. She's been working with our distribution arms, and she's working with customers too on finding out what their priorities are, and how we can best fit basically all in one, so you don't have to think about anything. We've been doing a lot with AI. We've been doing a lot with virtual reality. You'll hear a lot about hybrid environments today, being untethered, and how you can really be able to get these kids to engage. I think a lot of them are tired right now, and we need to get them back motivated. We also have two remarkable MIEs that we've hired. They are from the educational world as well. We've got Nicole and Cindy that they really focus on the pedagogy in the classroom. Today, they've been putting together some really great professional development academies, and they're extraordinary when it comes to the collaboration, the education in the classroom. So we're excited to have them as well. We also hired a gentleman who is focusing specifically on E-rate. E-rate is a very confusing process. It can be anyway, trying to figure out what products are eligible under category 1 and category 2, trying to figure out the deadlines for the 470s and 471s. So Tom has been doing E-rate for over 20 years. He's in the Texas area, and he's helping us work with the different manufacturer solutions that are eligible under E-rate. And rumor has it that there is another wave coming of a good amount of funds, so that we can focus on not only the continuity and the connectivity within the school environments, but also at home, making sure there's digital equity and making sure that every student has access to their education, even if they're at home. I want to dive a little bit into the professional development piece and what Nicole and Cindy has really put together. We are one of the very few Microsoft Global partners, and we take so much pride in that, and we're super excited of what's to come. They've developed these amazing, it's a customized academy, many different types of academies that they've cultivated, and they're really focusing on Microsoft in education, including Office 365, OneNote, Teams, and Sway. we did an amazing, and it was all virtual for 70 educators learning how to use these different tools to be able to have a hybrid environment as well as having physical students in the classroom. So it was such a success. And I know that they're putting together some really great academies for the summer. And also, we sometimes forget about the parents. And being a parent, I want to be able to help my child. I want to be able to learn as well and learn these tools and how that they can be successful at home as well as in the classroom. We're also working with vendors to kind of reimagine the workplaces. So if you look at the general classroom, a lot of it looks like it did when I went to school. That was a very long time ago. We're trying to reimagine of what that looks like. The libraries, what does it look like in the different open spaces? The labs are never going to be the same again. We're trying to work on the furniture and make it more embracing for kids to want to go in, be comfortable and want to learn and be in those spaces and working together. So we talked a little bit about the availability of technology. It is going to be a very stressful, I'm sure, fall and summer getting prepared. We have seen some constraints with some of the technology, and it really goes with the chipsets. If you try to go buy a car in recent time, those are a little bit constrained as well. The chips used in our computers are the same as we use in our vehicles. So there's some constraints that are causing some issues for us to get some availability. Some of the manufacturers are looking at right now 12 to 14 week lead times. We want to make sure that we are stocking, we've got technology available, and we're working on it now to make sure that you're successful and you have the technology you need in your classrooms, in the hands of students and faculty by the time school comes, and it's going to come fast. The next thing that I just want to talk about is the hybrid learning. So we've worked with like the Polys and the Logitechs, the ActionTechs and the Microsofts to visualize that hybrid environment. And I know a lot of schools they've gone from a virtual to a hybrid. And what happens in the fall? We may not need a hybrid environment, but there are some students that are so successful and are thriving right now from a remote environment that we may have to extend that capability for the fall and the future to come. So wouldn't it be amazing to have an environment where you can actually teach a student physically and remotely at the same time and be successful and have all of the kids being engaged? How great would it be for a teacher to be untethered and be able to educate those students and have them participate and be engaged and not being standing in front of the room? Well, we've got some amazing people that I'd like to introduce that are going to talk about being untethered and having that remote environment. I'm excited to introduce Kristen Horvath, who is a senior service specialist for Microsoft. She has a master's in educational technology and 10 years of classroom experience. She's incredible using the power of technology to make a positive impact for instrumental outcomes in both K-12 and higher education. And I am very fortunate to know her for a very long time. We also have the amazing David Lopez, who is the Senior Manager of Strategic Alliances, North America of Screenbeam. He is currently responsible for all of educational alliances in the US and is closely aligned with Microsoft partnering in wireless display technology. He was a Microsoft Innovative Educator Fellow working with school districts around the US on implementing and sustaining Microsoft technologies in the classroom. And I can tell you he's done so much more. We're super excited to have them both. Thank you very much and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Excited to be here. So give David a second to
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen
get set here. Yeah, perfect.
And here we go.
Fantastic. So welcome everybody. Lisa, that was a great backgrounder, and certainly Connection is one of my favorite partners from day one to be able to work with, and what you guys have done to grow your education practice, especially in partnership with Microsoft, has been huge. So we're going to spend time today to talk about literally scratching the surface, pun intended, and talking about untethering educators. This is something that David and I are incredibly passionate about, being former educators, about making it easier in the classroom, especially after the year that we've had. And Lisa certainly talks about the importance to make sure that the students are engaged and happy, but also making sure that our teachers are engaged and happy. So we're going to focus a lot on that today. So David, do you want to move it over so we can quickly... Lisa did a really good job of introducing ourselves, so I don't feel like I need to say a whole lot.
Yeah.
But just a quick backgrounder, and then maybe one or two parts that so you understand my specific role. But being a former educator, I taught fifth grade for 10 years. And I truly am passionate about integrating technology into the classroom. And so my journey to Microsoft really started with a passion for that in the classroom. I actually worked for one of our main distributors as one of the very first Microsoft education funded heads in distribution, to kind of start that practice, so that those that are selling into the K-12 and the higher ed space, all those resellers and partners, we were training them on how to speak to you all and understand what really the K-12 environment and higher ed landscape needed. And I've been with Microsoft now for almost 4 years, which is crazy to believe, and have had the pleasure of being able to work with both Lisa, as she said, over several years now, more than 4 at this point, and David as well. So David, if you want to speak
Yes.
your background a little bit further.
Yes, yeah, and as well, don't want to spend too much time. We've got a lot of things to cover, but yeah, I come from the classroom in the K through 5 world, working with technology and with students and teachers at the elementary school level, and then at the district level as well. And then, of course, as Lisa mentioned, with Microsoft previously as well. But with ScreenBeam, I've been with ScreenBeam going on a little over 7 years now, and been, again, grateful for that journey. But being a user of the product before I actually came to work with the company, and that's something that, and the same with Microsoft as well. My roles with that is being really passionate about being able to demonstrate uses of the technology that is simple. I'm a big advocate of the phrase that comes from my very first ed tech conference that I went to. And it was, if you want more technology in your classroom, show that you use what you already have, right? And so we have this ability to gather a lot of things in our classrooms as teachers, and we see bright, shiny objects, but we don't always use everything it's already been given to us. And so making the most out of what you have is really important as a teacher, and teachers know that, but technology has to be applied that way too. And we're going to talk about some of that today. So yeah, we'll move forward with it now.
So hopefully while we were talking, you had a chance to actually read the agenda, since we didn't go through that too much.
Oh, sorry.
But no, it's totally fine. David and I have been presenting together for several years now, so we play off of each other quite well. But I want to kind of set the tone here for just a second, and give the lay of the land. And I'm certainly preaching to the choir, I know, given the audience that we have. But from our perspective, and this was a Microsoft reflection, and then we share this certainly with all of our partners, and I think we all feel the same way, but certainly the way that we use technology has changed dramatically over the past several years, but even more dramatically over the past year. And we've been given more choices, but we know that given more choices and the need to have more choices often brings both benefits and challenges. And so what we're trying to understand is, given these new challenges, how do we help to solve for that with a complete solution? David and I took some time to reflect on these particular challenges, and we feel very passionate about them, but we also feel passionately that what we're able to talk to you about today will help to solve for a lot of these challenges. But certainly most of you guys can relate to this increasingly complex IT environment. whether you are actually in the IT position where you're on the IT team, or you're an educator. You were thrown, especially March, April, May timeframe of last year. You guys took in, if you didn't already, thousands of devices to make sure that your students had access and equity. And so as a result of adding all of this technology into your environment, it created a whole new array of struggles. So how do we solve for that? And I just mentioned access and equity, but there is a massive struggle to provide that to our students. And I hate to think that access and equity have become buzzwords, but these are two key elements to making sure that we're reaching every single one of our students. It should have been something that was important pre-pandemic, but it's really been brought to the forefront. But not only the struggle to provide access and equity, but also to make sure that our students are engaged regardless of where they are. And we'll show you some statistics here in just a minute that I think are really staggering in terms of the loss of engagement over the past year, and how can we fix that. The point in the middle, there has always been pressure to scale in making sure that you can bring the latest technology to your institution, to your environment, but also reduce cost. And certainly that has been a struggle within the past year. Thankfully, we've got, and Lisa hinted at additional funding, and especially E-rate funding, but additional funding that continues to keep flowing. How do you make sense of all the federal funding that you can spend? How do you make the most of the budget that you do have? We'll speak to that a little bit too. And then the last two pieces really kind of go hand in hand in terms of providing a flexible, productive, and secure option that just works for it. And my heart goes out to teachers, because they just want a solution in their classroom that can support their students wherever they are, if it's a hybrid environment, whether they're in the classroom or out, that just works, that they don't have to feel overwhelmed. They don't have to feel that pressure to immediately pick up on something that they're uncomfortable with. How do we reach out to them? How do we make that more simplistic? And then how do we provide resources, thanks large in part to partners like Connection, to provide them training resources so that they don't feel overwhelmed to use all of this technology. So identifying 5 key areas here of where we've really, we've struggled. It's a good thing to have, and change is good, but change can be very difficult and challenging. So how do we overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, if we do our job right with this presentation, we'll be able to come back and talk about all these again in just a minute. But
exactly.
So let me see if we can click. So we look at this from that perspective, and kind of doing where we are right now, and what's going on currently. And we found this great resource as we were looking through, kind of presenting some information. This is a return to learn tracker that was put together. And it really does a great job. And I'm going to scoot in on my screen here so I can drive this a little bit differently. But it really does. If you want to use it, it's returntolearntracker.net. So it's a great resource. This is actually an embedded web page inside the PowerPoint. So that's why it looks like this. But we have this ability to look at data now differently than we ever have before as well. And that's one of the benefits of living in the times we live in. But we look at this map and we see things are changing on a regular basis, and very rapidly as well. I just looked at this a couple of days ago, and it's already, some of these numbers are already several percentage points different than they were just a couple of days ago. So if I focus specifically on like New Hampshire here, it lets me see, okay, where are we with being fully remote, 3%, hybrid, and then fully in person, there's about 34% of school districts that are operating that way. But then if I want to look at more trends on a national level, there's a couple of great charts in here that let us see that. This is kind of a weird looking chart, but the way that it starts is going from November 2nd and looking at it that way, and then seeing the trend lines of remote, which is up here at the top for fully remote, and then hybrid in the middle, and then in person in the bottom here. And you can see these trend lines as we go across, how things are changing. There is some consistency that we're seeing if you look at even another chart. If I go fully up to the top of the page and looking at just where we are right now, and this is the one that was noticeably different when I looked at it just the other day versus today. We are seeing consistently a lot of hybrid things that are still in place. But we are seeing the numbers as well of in-person increasing. And again, like I said, on a pretty rapid basis as we move on in the year with the COVID vaccine rolling out. And again, Kristen and I aren't pretending to be experts in this. We're not trying to, but it is a great resource that we use. And we look at this and we say, okay, how do we provide, the right solutions at the right time? And not only that, being able to maybe look a little bit further in the future based on historic data, over the last year and where we're going to be. And this is a great resource. So I encourage you to take a look at it if you get a chance to. And they actually just changed this whole chart. Some of this stuff was not in there just a few days. How they're looking at it. So that's where we are, right now, really current data. And then this is a great slide that Kristen put together. It kind of breaks down some other information. So I'll let her go through some of this.
Yeah, and I won't read through this whole slide by any means, but I always get the most out of percentages and staggering statistics. And this, again, as a teacher, from my teacher heart, this really spoke to me in terms of, you saw right in the middle there, 2/3 of teachers say students are less prepared with their work than they were this time last year. And however, when this study was taken, but I think you could say that across the board throughout the whole school year. And the sheer fact that 56% of teachers said that they had covered just half or less than half of their content. And so this has just been a struggle and I can speak, and Lisa, you talked about being sympathetic and empathetic to what parents are going through as well, because I have so many friends of mine who are concerned about their young children. What have they missed? What gaps are we going to see going forward? How do we prevent that from happening? How do we play catch up, so to speak? But I think the most important or the most staggering statistic that was on the screen or on this slide, only 84% of students are likely to attend class if studying remotely. And I know what that was, when I was in person compared to 91% of in-person students to actually attend class or be engaged. There were a lot of other factors that played into that, whether they were absent that day or whatnot. And that could also certainly be a statistic that they show in the higher ed space. Mm-hmm. But you have extenuating circumstances, and you also have a connectivity gap. But you also have, that engagement piece, what's bringing them to want to actually be part of the lesson and make it simple for them. We're hoping to speak to some of those things today, but I'll just, there's all 6 of those boxes are very important to all of us. And we certainly want to make sure that we are aware of this, and it's not really anything we didn't expect. But how do we make a plan for that going forward, so that we can help to alleviate these statistics?
Excellent.
And speaking of making a plan, just to take one giant step back, I know our team, and I think everybody that's in the ed tech industry has taken a big step back to reflect on how did the first couple of months of COVID go for us. It was our H1, it was the first half, it was really the first half of 2020 or all of 2020 from March on. But the things that happened, the gut reactions and the knee-jerk reactions that were happening to scramble to make sure that every student has access to technology. We reflected on what that looked like, and then going forward, how do we make sure that we put a plan in place so that we don't ever have to be reactive, that we are actually planning proactively going forward. But that it upended our entire world. And so David, if you want to go to the next slide. We lost David. Did we lose him altogether? I can share from my screen if I need to. Technical difficulties are always fun. Let me get myself set up here. And I'll share my screen in the meantime. These are the fun things about working from and learning from home. Can you see my screen? Lisa, can you see my screen? My PowerPoint?
It's just not in presentation mode, but yeah, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. I will move ahead. Apologies, guys. We will get there. This is the fun part about using transitions. And so getting back to, the reactive versus proactive, we as a team, we really, as an entire Microsoft education team, we did a gut check. How can we better help our customers going forward to actually put a plan in place with them and not come at them, but to support them and help them? So we as a Surface team, from a devices perspective, because we saw the mad dash to get devices in hands of students, said we need to work with our broader teams and our partners to help to go to customers and actually, help reach our hands out to say, how can we help create and be a part of really your strategic plan? K-12s have always put strategic plans in place. Hey, David, welcome back. We've always had strategic plans in place, but how can we rewrite those strategic plans going forward to include all the lessons that we've had from this past year? And certainly we still have schools that are trying to complete and finish up their one-to-one plans. But the biggest gap, in my opinion, and you've seen something different in every state, I think, across the country. We made a mad dash to make sure we supported students, but what are we giving? What are we providing to our teachers? What kinds of devices, especially, are we providing to our teachers that might be a step above of what they had been using previously, so that it can support that hybrid, high flex environment, to provide them with an inking and a touch experience that makes it a much more natural experience in the classroom. Give them that quality video experience and microphone experience when they're using video conferencing. And then LTE capability became massively important to both students, especially who didn't have connectivity at home, but also teachers who may also struggle with that. So just being able to have a flexible device strategy, I speak to that a lot. So that we can get in there and help these schools plan for this. Certainly the learning spaces have changed. Lisa talked about this and redesigning the classrooms. How do you redesign your classroom to make sure that it is highly flexible? And so David will demo here in just a second about actually how to physically change some of those or enhance some of the things that you may already have in your classroom to make it simplistic. But I think at the end of the day, we want to make sure that it's extremely scalable and simple. That's the part of the planning that we want to make sure that we are helping our customers with. We don't want to throw a bunch of individual solutions at you. We want to make sure that we can provide you with a simplistic platform solution, really with your long-term use in mind, not to solve for the immediate. Because quite honestly, I've said this to a lot of my customers, the concept of hybrid learning now is no longer going away. We tested this a little bit in the past with, I know at least in down south in South Carolina, we tested this a little bit with snow days or remote e-learning days. I think that we've opened the door for the potential of giving choice or giving flexibility. So the concept of hybrid learning is not going to go away. And so how do we future-proof that? David, you were especially passionate about the teacher retention piece. I want to let you speak to that, because not that I'm not passionate about it by any means, but just some of the statistics that were staggering that came through this in terms of keeping our amazing teachers in the classroom, because this, we understand and we get it, this past year has been immense for them. How do we make that more attractive to them and ease of use going forward? Oh, David, we can't hear you. I may have to speak for him after all.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes, we can hear you now. Perfect.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened. Everything kind of went haywire here for a minute. So, but yeah, I mean, and going back one to that scalable and simple solution, that's one of those things when you look at from an educator's perspective, especially having, as we looked at those previous slides, having all that technology thrown at teachers all at once, all of a sudden, when you're moving forward, again, you have to look how that has affected teachers. And we're seeing significant drop-offs that are unprecedented. I hate that term because we use it now all the time, which it kind of loses its luster. But the idea that we're seeing so many teachers leave, this particular slide looks at, the huge drop-off of what has happened in public education in K through 12 as it has really collapsed. And you see the numbers at the very end of this chart. It looks like the chart is finished, but that's actually a huge drop you're seeing at the end there of local publication employment, and how that enrollment is still there. We're still seeing enrollment as is still increasing and moving forward. Obviously, that's a population thing that's just happening naturally, but then you're seeing a huge drop off in teachers. And if you go back one slide, there was I forgot to mention it. It has dropped more than 500,000 jobs below its year ago levels, and 890,000 jobs below where it would have to keep up with growth in student enrollment since 2008. And half of those 890,000 are teachers. So if you skip forward to that next slide again, you know, it really is sticking out like a sore thumb, that end of that chart there. And so one of the things that Chris and I were talking about as we're putting this together is, as schools are trying to figure out, okay, how do we deal with this? How do we plan proactively? We have to think about ease of use, and that's where that simple and long-term, simple and effective bullet point comes from, and with long-term uses in mind. So it has to be simple, because if you make it more complex with all sorts of other things that are thrown into the room, and you have training for teachers that have to do training on this and training on that and training on this, it doesn't help that idea of, okay, well, just come back and it's going to be really complicated. Or do we look at, okay, how do we break it down to the components that teachers are absolutely going to need, but that are also a premium solution, that is a solution that says, hey, we've spent time thinking about what is the right way to do this and what is going to be effective, that's going to work, but that is also going to say, hey, this is how we should be teaching in a modern classroom. This is what a modern classroom looks like. Come back and work with us to make this better. And starting with that baseline, and that we're going to talk about now, really is, hey, this is a solution that is simple, that does provide you with the resources that you need. And we're going to show a live demo of this as well. But if you see this, you know, it's a surface. In this case, you have the surface here. You have the screen beam connected to a screen. You see that connection automatically happen, which it's really that simple. And I'm going to show that in just a second. But you provided yourself, when you look at the surface, as Kristen's going to talk about, and I've used Surface, and I'm a shill for for that as well. A big Surface user. Won't be shy about that. But if you pick up that device and you hold it, and I'm going to do that in just a second, you realize that now, you know, I've got a solution that allows me to have a really powerful teaching device in my hands, but it can replace a document camera. And I'll demonstrate that in a second. I've got a camera on the front, a camera on the back. I've got the ability to switch between that and my screen really quickly and really easily. So I don't have to switch between a camera and a computer and a desktop and a tablet device and an interactive board necessarily. I have all of that with my pen and with my device here, my Surface. And the screen beam, when I'm connected, and again, I can show you really how quickly and easy that is. You know, I just hit connect, and you'll see my screen in just a second. Whoops, come on. So I press one button, and now I'm connected to the screen in the room, right? And so that simplistic solution that I've got selected now gives me the ability to do all the things that I need to be able to do as a teacher when I'm in the room. And so now I'm connected to my device. I'm connected to the room. And again, all I did was walk in with my device. So we talk about having a standards for contactless solutions. I carry this device with me when I walk in the room or into any classroom, and I can connect to the screen in the room. And I've got the screen beam connected here to my big screen. And now I've got the ability to do the things that I need to be able to do as a teacher again. And I've also, as a district, you've created a contactless environment. So I can do things like, you know, I mentioned the camera, right? So the camera on the Surface is another premium, you know, device that I have the ability to just turn that on. And now I can use this as my document camera. I can use it as a dissection camera. I had a teacher in Ireland that showed this really great, you know, she was doing dissection. So she would set the animal right there in front of the Surface and do the dissection. She could walk over to a student's desk, show the students work while they were working on their dissection. But now I've got a wireless mobile document camera right here with this device. And again, what's beautiful about this is not only that it's a video, I can take a snapshot of that, right? And I can open up that picture and I can go into my photos and open that up. And now I've got the ability to pick up my pen and start writing on that device, right? So now I have the ability to do that really quickly and really easily. You know, if I were to separate this little guy into the abdomen and here's the feet here, right? But now I've got the ability to do that really quickly and really easily from one device, right? And I'm connected and I've got a reliable solution that now, and it's also a premium experience. I know Kristen uses that device a lot, but that's important. If you think about what you're putting in your teacher's hands and you're trying to get them to be in the classroom to retain them and say, hey, this is what we're trying to give you is that premium experience with the Surface and the screen beam, and this is how it's supposed to work, and this is how it should work. That's what you're giving them. So now you've given that premium writing experience, a premium wireless display experience that I can walk around the room. I can have set up my classroom how I need to set it up. I'm in a space that's a very small space, but I can walk around this space with plenty of confidence, knowing that, hey, I can walk up to my camera and show you, hey, look, everything I've done there is on that screen, right? But what's cool about this as well is what we give you in that Windows 10, that Surface experience. If you've already got touch screens in your room, we also give you the ability to still use those wirelessly, right? So that's the beauty of one of the beauties of Windows 10 is that now I could pick up my stylus if a student's screen is being shared to the room, and I can pick up my stylus and start writing on that screen. And all of that, like I said, is still showing up on my Surface device, right? So now all those things that I've added, right? Now all those things that I've added are all on this screen still, right? So now I've had that wireless touch experience, which only happens in that Windows 10 environment with ScreenBeam, because I can connect and still use that interactive whiteboard as I needed to be able to use it, right? So that piece of it is really powerful in an environment where you're trying to bring teachers back, you're trying to bring students back, and you're trying to say, hey, this is a better experience, this is an engaging experience. If I can hand my device off to a student, I can have the student connect to the screen, right? And we'll demonstrate that idea in just a little bit as well. But I don't want to talk about products really, because it's about the experience and it's about how that is functioning in that classroom. And literally, if we look at that slide in just a second, literally that's what the setup looks like. We talked about simple. You literally have a screen on the wall, you have a Surface in the teacher's hands, you have a screen beam next to the screen, and that's your setup, right? So now I've got the ability to do all the things that I need to be able to do. And with ScreenBeam, we also offer the ability with Windows in that environment to do those hybrid connections as well. So I can have a camera connected to it and still have that experience, or using the camera on the screen on the Surface device still gives you that same experience in a wireless environment, which is how the Surface was meant to be used, right, Kristen? I mean, it was meant to be, at least this Pro model, it was meant to be carried around.
No, 100%. And I just anecdotally, and I've so many of my customers have heard me say this over the years, you know, if you've been a teacher within the last 10 years, and it still pains me to walk into classrooms where they're stuck and docked at the front of the classroom and they cannot detach from their desk or their docking station, and the teacher is up at the front and the rest of the class is happening, you know, behind you. Mm-hmm. And that to me was so painful. And even having to, you know, toggle back and forth. I may have had a smart board in my room or a Promethean board in my room, but I'm constantly having to go back to my computer. When I was finally given a Surface Pro device, my immediate thought was, imagine what I could have done with this in the classroom. And that is the general reaction to every teacher when we put a Surface device in their hands, at least the Pro form factor or any of our detachable options, just to give them the freedom. And really, you can do that with any Windows 10 device if you can, you know, provided the wireless display options that you have with ActionTech. Yeah, it frees you up. And every teacher knows the importance of proximity. Of course, within this past year, we've learned about social distancing. And that's been probably the most painful thing as teachers, but proximity to our students to make sure that they're engaged is massive. And so if I can stand behind my students or stand with my students, they're going to respond in a completely different way.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about this is this solution, when you look at this, and I call it a better together solution, when you look at this idea, and again, we're going to hit on all those points that we talked about in the very beginning, but just the fact that I can then, with Lisa talked about training, it's really important, again, as you're trying to retain teachers or get teachers, say, hey, you got to get on board with this, with us, and trying to make all this work, because we all have to work together for the students to make it happen. You also talk about what that involves. Well, if I have a setup like this, right, where I have a setup where I have all my this setup with a really simple solution, if I've got tools that are already on the surface, and I remember I mentioned that phrase, actually, I'll give credit to Rushton Hurley. Some of you may know him, but he said that. He said, if you want more device in your more technology in your classroom, show that you use what you already have. Well, I've got inside the surface, I've got a whiteboard solution that you're seeing here. It's already built in. It comes with it. I've got things like Office 365 with PowerPoint and Teams, Teams especially as a solution for collaborating and for having that hybrid experience and enhancing that and making that better. I've got all that here on this device, right? And so if I think about that, I need to be able to use the tools that I have and make the most of it. So when I talk about training, if I just have this simple solution that you're seeing here, I can hyper focus my training for my teachers on what I know they're going to carry around with them all the time, and the experience, making it very simple. And now all of a sudden, I'm not having to train on document camera software and whiteboard software and LMS software and all sorts of other things. I can do it all in one thing, in one solution. And I can hyper focus that training so that I'm not spreading all my teachers even thinner than they already are. And again, that points back to how do we combat this loss of teachers, and then that student engagement as well. Again, if you look at this from a classroom perspective, with a classroom full of devices, a classroom full of Surface devices, or that also enhances that experience and then gives you that flexibility, right? So that's an important thing to think about when you look at untethering the teacher, giving them focused training. They don't have to switch between multiple devices. They have this wireless touchback and this wireless ink back. And then you have a flexible classroom layout, right? And so again, the ability to move around the room, move the desks where you need to, have them set up how you need to. Now it's no longer 6 feet, now it's 3 feet, so we can move all the desks around again, but that kind of experience is really important to think about. And Krista and I came up with this, I think, on the slide, it says you have more functionality, right, with this and the screen beam and that setup with less devices. And now again, it gives you wide open possibilities for your budget as a school district. Now I can look at expanding that to other things that I need to be able to do, and just so many more things as we move forward. So Kristen's going to break down. I think, Kristen, we want to move back to the slides.
Yep.
Unless there's anything else you think I need to demo, but that was a good.
No, that was perfect. And while you're talking there, I keep reflecting back to that initial slide that we showed of all of the struggles and challenges. Even from an IT perspective, this type of solution makes it a lot easier to manage. If you standardize this across the board in all of your classrooms, even if you have even if you are one-to-one in the classroom, if you have that solution in place, then it's one easy solution that everyone's using. It's from a management perspective, you don't have something different in the 5th grade classrooms that you might have in the 3rd grade. These can apply across all classrooms, across the entire K-12 environment, and makes it incredibly relevant. And to your point too, David, that was one of my biggest pain points, was having to learn. And I love Promethean and I love the software that they leverage, but to have to learn how to use all these different products, softwares, and be trained on that was painful. Mm-hmm. If I can just use what I'm using every day with my students in the Office 365 suite that I'm using in Teams, if that's easy and flexible on all devices that I'm using, makes my life a lot easier to manage. So absolutely. So this is the slide that David was referencing, and we I'm sure somebody else has said this along the way too, but more functionality with less. You can do more with less all day long. Mm-hmm. So I am going to talk and break down and keeping an eye on our time too, because we certainly know that probably by now most of you may have either fast forwarded or tried to speed it up, or it's the world we live in in today's world. But I do want to make sure, because when I talk to our education customers and we talk about Surface devices, oftentimes they just think about our Pro device. And it's our iconic device. It is absolutely, it's where we started with our innovation, but we have so many more members of the family now and so many different price ranges as well. Because also the number one message that I hear over and over again is, well, Surface is just too expensive. It's nice, but it's too expensive. We truly have a device for everyone now. And so I won't go over every single one of these, but I wanted to show this slide because I think it just captures the number of options that we have. There's something here for everyone, even down to the beautiful 50-inch Hub2S that I have behind me here for collaboration, for video conferencing. I could have invited it to this meeting and gone up and immediately touched it. I actually could have even joined the Zoom meeting on my Hub2S from here, and just having one of these in my classroom, that would have been amazing to be able to teach from, and then have my kids join in remotely. But more specifically, I get asked all the time, Kristen, what are some of the best devices for education? And certainly my first reaction is, well, what are you looking for? But I like to be able to give a breakdown on our best for K-12 devices, really, which you see on the left-hand side there is our Surface Go 2, second generation of a 10-inch 2-in-1 device. So it's the same form factor, same device as a Pro, and a much smaller form factor. This has been a huge hit for our K-12 customers across the board. In fact, we recently had, right before the pandemic and as the pandemic was honing in on us, a school district within the state of Tennessee knew that they had to provide access and equity to all of their students across K-12, so from your kindergartners to your high school seniors, and they wanted to make sure that experience was seamless. They invested in over 73,000 Surface Go 2 devices for their students. That was a massive investment on their part, while at the same time, though, the price point on the Go is pretty attractive. Starting price point on the Go 2 for education customers is $349. So when you're looking at what you're trying to invest in over time, and again, that's a device that's going to last them over time, that made sense to that district to be able to do that. The device, and I'll also mention too, Surface Go 2 also has LTE capabilities. We have a district in DC who actually it was very attractive to them that these devices had LTE capabilities, because the majority of those students, when they went home, did not have connectivity. And so being able to provide that was a worthy investment to them to be able to provide that to their students. The device in the middle, the Laptop Go, is our newest form factor, and actually was designed specifically for our education customers. Our engineering team, for the first time ever, came to us as an education team and said, what do you need? What are your customers asking for? And we talked about keeping a simplistic form factor. So it's a traditional laptop, which most students and teachers alike can appreciate, but not necessarily compromising on performance, but providing them an affordable device. And that's what we heard over and over again. So I don't ever like to put numbers necessarily on a slide, but I think it's very staggering when you show that you can get what you can get for an i5 device at a starting price point, and then across the board, even $700 for an i5 8128 device that has touch capabilities, that has all of the things that you would expect from Surface from a performance standpoint and an experience standpoint, but it balances out with cost. Is awesome. So I could actually see that as a beautiful device for both students and or teachers, especially for the teachers who may not be comfortable yet with the Pro form factor, although Pro is my favorite. David's already said enough and demoed enough to really talk about the benefits of having a Pro device. The latest generation that we have of Pro is Pro 7 that we released recently, and really pairing that to, and David kind of hinted at this, pairing that with Teams, pairing that with all of our Office products, all of our native products and software are tested first on Surface. So you know that you're going to get a premium experience in each of those products because it's prototyped, it's tested first on our Surface devices. And David, would you like to share real quickly about your products?
Yes,
we're doing a little song and dance right now of our products.
Yeah, now we're doing the product. But yeah, I mean, again, I will say this with great confidence that if you don't have, and I won't say screen beam here, I know I just said it, but if you do all that with Kristen and you set all that up and you go buy the great Surface devices and then you bring it into a classroom that doesn't give you the best wireless display experience, that is not capable of doing what you need it to do, is something that's on the cheap and maybe a consumer version, or maybe it's built into the screen and you think, oh, that's going to work fine, or it's built into the projector and oh, that's great because they showed a demo of it and it's going to be fine. We do this on an enterprise level, right? So we work in Fortune 500 companies. We've done this across school districts by the thousands of devices and deployed the solution. So we know that it works. And if you start with ScreenBeam, right, and you say, okay, I have this platform that's going to give us, like you see on the device here, the 1000 EDU on the left-hand side, that's our standard, really our flagship classroom device that gives you, fully cross-platform support. Obviously, it's a best experience with Windows 10. That's hands down, just because of the demo that I showed you here today with the inking, with the touch, with the cameras. That just works. It's the best experience. And we also have the solutions for the other platforms as well that comes with one device. It allows you to do that. And then other features that we've added into it, like digital signage, multi-screen view, all those other things as well. And then you go to the 1100 plus, which is, I call that's more of our hybrid classroom. You're going to have those classrooms that are hybrid still, that are doing that. We have UC solutions that are built into the ScreenBeam 1100 plus. It's a step up. We normally say this is mainly an enterprise product, but as we see, our schools are adding that hybrid environment sometimes, or they're saying we want to do that for the long term. And that's what we see going forward, then that's probably the better device in that case. But both of these devices, even when you pair that with the Surface and people look, oh, those are expensive things, it actually, as we showed you today, and Kristen and I have a whole slide that we've done before, breaks down the cost of making it a very simple and kind of making it a very, the ability to pare down the classroom to those simple things. The cost of Surface and ScreenBeam almost completely disappears, because you're saving money on cabling, you're saving money on wiring, you're saving money on training, you're saving money on device maintenance, because now you're just down to maintaining one device versus multiple devices. With ScreenBeam, we have a built-in management solution that you manage all those devices remotely without any extra cost. There's no annual cost to that either for ScreenBeam. And so those kind of things, all of a sudden, if you really break down those costs and you look at, hey, these are two great solutions that are that come with it, it's a great. And if you go to the next slide, if we go to that full classroom experience with ScreenBeam and Windows 10, you also have the ability to do multiple devices, up to 50 student devices connected to the ScreenBeam at one time. And in that Windows 10 experience, again, all of that touch and ink really all transfers to the student device. So if you share a student's device as the teacher and you orchestrate that, and you say, okay, could you click on like 2 more slides ahead? Kristen, one more after that, one more. There you go. So now I can see all my student devices, and now I have the ability to select one and share that to the front of the room. And again, especially in this contactless COVID environment where students are sitting at their desks and you'd want to keep them in one place, you press a button, that student shares their screen. You can talk about that and even interact with that from the front of the room. So again, that's why this is an experience. What do my teachers need when they get back in the classroom? How are they going to make this work? And how am I going to make it simple for them? And again, what we've broken down for you is absolutely the truth. It can work this way. It is a better experience for the teachers. It's a better experience for the students. And if you go to I think that's all I have on our product, but we need to hit back on those key things that we talked about in the beginning, and why this solution, sorry, there's a bunch of animations on this slide. You should see the animation pane for this one. It looks crazy.
I love this. I didn't realize this was so built out. This shows everything. Like, you've got OneNote going on here. Like, I need this for myself. Oh man, David, this is cool. All right. So imagine for just a second, and we're almost finished, I promise. But I didn't want to forget our super awesome friend. I referenced it already. But Surface Hub, to us, we've had a lot of questions from our education customers about how to incorporate our hub technology. You want to talk about simple, being able to, I kind of reference this, walk right up to it, invite the hub to a meeting, and have all of my students immediately pop up on the screen if they're remote. But not only in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and think about your media centers, think about your admin offices. We have several actually district offices who have purchased Surface Hub on the Steelcase Realm cart, where it's incredibly mobile. You also can purchase the APC battery that can provide up to an hour worth of completely wireless movement, and that's huge on such a device like this. But we have district offices who invested in this so that they can walk up and join a meeting ad hoc and not have to drive across campus or drive across the district, or in some cases, especially in some of our large, and especially where David is in Florida, those districts are miles and miles away from each other. Hub can bring all of that together and just creates a seamless collaboration experience and video conferencing experience that you might not have thought of in the past. We've got a lot of customers asking us questions about how to use this in hybrid environments. And I won't spend too much time on this, but if you have questions about our Hub technology, I could spend hours on talking just about Hub alone. And we said we'd bring you back to this slide from the very beginning, because we like to make sure that we bring it all together. But hopefully, David and I have shown you multiple options today, but within a streamlined option on how to really address each one of these concerns. We sympathize, we empathize with all of these concerns, but we truly want to make it simple. And so certainly leverage us as resources to speak to this, to speak to your district about this, leverage us with Connection as that complete solution. I can't sell my product without the rest of these wonderful people on the call, and vice versa. And so in order for us to make this total solution for you, we work together to do that, to bring this to you. David, I don't know if you want to speak to any of these and how hopefully we've checked all the boxes on this one.
Yeah, I know we're short on time. We need to pass it back to Lisa. But yeah, I mean, the ability to have that flexible environment to, again, to provide that access to teachers, to integrate new technology without overly pressuring teachers. This is the right way to go. And again, we were happy to talk more about it with you and with Connection. Thank you.
So I'll stop sharing and I'll pass it back to Lisa.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The first thing I think about is accessibility too, and making it super fun for those students who potentially have an IEP. And it's really engaging, and so many students, they learn in different ways. And so you're adapting to the different types of learning styles that the children and even the teachers have when they're teaching. So amazing technology, and thank you so much. I want to thank everyone who has joined us today. It's been amazing. I always learn something from the both of you, so I appreciate you being here with us. We will be sending out information. We'll be sending out this amazing presentation. I love analytics and the data behind the method behind the madness. We'll be sending out some STEM information. We're going to be sending out some of our professional development academies. And also some E-rate information. So if you need anything, or you need to learn or want more information, please reach out to us. But thank you so much. We're here to help, and we're here to help you be successful in your classroom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.